Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumberger channel. Of course, a strange music show where each and every week we just take a different album and just start reviewing it, right? So in today's episode, we are, of course, returning to the randomiser with another look at another suggestion from Samuel Salbol 3370. So it was back in our video on She Came Through the Window to Stand by the Door that we were suggested to check out Kali Malone, Sarah Davachi and Felicia Atkinson in future videos. The randomiser has already chucked out Kali Malone previously. We already did a video where we looked at the phenomenal drone experience that was Living Torch. So today we are further discovering drone music, essentially, with a look at an album by Sarah Davachi. So I have had this one in my Bandcamp collection for a really long time now, as the plan was to eventually review this at some point, even prior to doing the randomiser, but I never got around to it, and now the randomiser says review the album, so here we are today. So without further ado, I present The Untuning of the Sky by Sarah Davachi. So, of course, who is Sarah Davachi? Well, Sarah Davachi is a Canadian composer and performer whose work is concerned with the close intricacies of timbral and temporal space, utilising extended durations and considered harmonic structures that emphasise gradual vibrations in texture, overtone complexity, psychoacoustic phenomena, and tuning and intonation. Very cool stuff. And so over the course of her career, Davachi has been carving out a name for herself in the world of drone music, utilising both acoustic and electronic instruments to create an incredible discography of truly immersive drones. And so in today's episode, we're actually looking at what is the debut album from Davachi, The Untuning of the Sky, which was originally released in 2013 on Full Spectrum Music on cassette, as well as on Davachi's own label, Late Music, as a digital download. The download featuring some different artwork here as well. And so this album, I think, beautifully sets the scene for the wonderful world of drone music that Davachi creates. On this one, utilises a number of different instruments, actually, including various synthesizers such as the ARP Odyssey, Buchla 100, Korg PS3300, Sequential Circuits Pro 1 and a Surge modular, as well as Mellotron M400 tape replay keyboard and a harmonium. A mouthful to get through all that stuff, but with these tools at her disposal, Davachi essentially just draws phenomenal textures from all of these different sources, creating this wonderful electroacoustic drone experience that just immerses you in these phenomenally deep layers of slow drifting drones. This is essentially the exact thing that I adore from the genre, and something I have played a lot since I was first suggested it many years ago, so let's discuss it, shall we? So opening up with Alms Vert, we're immediately treated to essentially this low, sublime low end that starts droning away, expanding with a very resonant space being established by Davachi. It holds onto these tones for such a monumentally long time, this hovering glow between being produced by the sound waves, essentially. And it's immediately just this incredibly cosmic experience that it just, every time I hear it, just completely untethers me from time, I feel. This long-form drone experience that just slowly surfs along, like as I listen to it, my mind just always starts to wander as I start to just allow myself to start gazing up towards the sky, essentially, watching it slowly shift as the clouds pass over. You've got a very cosmic resonating experience that lets each and every unique layer of sound establish themselves so slowly across the source of the track time, slowly opening up the floodgates to let in new levels of tones in, be it a pulsating, emanating drone now accompanying that cosmic layer that opened up the entire experience. And then it all just seems to occur over and over and over, barely etched into time itself, and instead just being these pulsating, droning landscapes that occur for however long they seem to need to. And it takes so long to occur that you actually barely notice the appearance of a very faint melody hidden in amongst the layers of drone on this particular composition, until suddenly that is all brought to the foreground of the composition itself, playing out like a very sad and mournful eulogy. This is exactly the kind of thing that I adore in drone music, the way it just slowly all occurs, across its runtime, slowly letting each and every element just very faintly fall into the scene at the necessary times and just fade in over very long stretches of time. With it, you just end up getting completely lost within the scene, and just hearing this music, it's like watching the whole world just drift past as you stare out windows, essentially. At least to me anyway. It's just like you completely become untethered in time as you do so. Like, I have to say, it's odd how much music reminds me of transit, especially train journeys. Like, this is a parallel that comes up an awful lot in these reviews. Like, it seems to have happened in a bunch of them now, maybe 3 or 4 of them by this point. But regardless, I think it's weird because it's happened more than once. But I think there is actually a little bit of logic to this, which I'm going to try to explain here. Commuting on trains is just something that a lot of us do. And the way we all uniquely experience train journeys, it kind of ties into what we do creatively sometimes, at least for some of us. Like, I don't know exactly if this is the case for Davachi, but maybe I would think so. For myself, writing a lot of reviews on the train just means that I naturally interpret music that way. But then I consider the fact that this particular review was written in my very office here. But then, even while reviewing it, the same parallel occurred as when you're on a train, essentially, staring out the window. I think this might actually be partly in because I have actually listened to this album on the train journeys before, but it might also be part because of the album's artwork. Like, I can't help but get this vibe of an image being photographed from a train window of a countryside just going past so quickly and so suddenly. And the photo that we have for the Bandcamp version just has that vibe, hence why I thought it was kind of interesting to mention this interpretation that crops up so many times. Like, I get this sense when listening to this album of Davachi just sat alone on the train, staring out the window and feeling this kind of, sad existential melancholy as she just becomes untethered in time by the music. It's like those moments where you're staring out the window and just watching the whole world pass before your very eyes. To get back to the track, though, I do think this is without a doubt a fascinating opening track, though. It's one that feels arguably minimalist in a lot of respects, the way it slowly lets these droning layers occupy the scene in this almost randomized order, perhaps, as it creates this wonderful experience that drifts past the 12 minutes without you even barely noticing any of that time at all. All that time just spent immersed in these wonderful drones, all sourced from the variety of instruments Davachi utilised in the creation of this album. And long-form drone music that just lets the entire scene just slowly develop from the deep layers of immersive sound waves. Like, I find from the very moment this one starts, I'm always completely hypnotised and lulled, just often drifting into these slow emerging dream worlds that come from naturally falling asleep. This is just the effect that the way this music sounds to me, like it's just these big, large, comfy pillows of, rather melancholy immersive drone music. And I find it just always lulls me, making it an absolute favourite to put on whenever I do feel like taking a nap. But although I like to listen to that context, it is amazing how it all sounds, though, with it being one of my favourite drone albums I have been introduced to, and probably one of my most played out of anything that's been suggested for this show, I think, like when I actually start to think about it. Like, this one has just really stuck with me since it was first suggested, and I'm glad it's popped up on the wheel because I have always wanted to talk about this one. Moving along, we get to the next track of Spanish Banks. So this one kind of offers up a very odd tone, perhaps the harmonium played in a higher register before it's then accompanied by the sympathetic low ends that start to carry it all along, supporting it as the composition starts to unfold across that length of time. Much like the first track, this one is again another hypnotising and resonating drone experience, one that fills up your entire body with this immersive droning soundscape that starts to intensify itself, holding the notes for longer resonating times, whilst introducing new layers of synthetic tones sourced from the very many instruments. And for me, it's kind of like you've just got this audio laser beam zapping into the very epicenter of your brain, gently massaging it as it all just intensifies, getting louder and pressing further and further. Eventually, as this one occurs though, it does seem to recede for a few moments, only to let certain electronic layers briefly rear their head, creating these wonderful textural layers, before the low end starts to vibrate and hum in the very center of the scene. And it once again is another hypnotising set, one that forces you into the cosmic, stretched out dreamworlds that your mind just wanders off to. And as this one all occurs, it just seems to keep that momentum going from the established tempo of that initial drone, if that makes sense. Keeping the layers coming and coming until there's even this delightful sort of tone that makes an appearance, kind of like stuttering away, like this little calling effect, almost like a vocal perhaps. But according to the liner notes produced from the instruments, it seems, but who knows. It's kind of like just a little ooh sound of sorts. Very neat, and it just adds this lovely level of character to this particular composition that allows itself to be pulled further and further into the oscillating effects that the instruments provide. The result from prolonging the drones for such impossibly long times. And listening to it, it all just has this wonderful physicality, I have to say, just rising up in your very being and putting you into that state of suspension, taking you out of time itself again, as the world continues to go on by. Only maybe this time our very perception of it is starting to be warped, influenced by the emerging of dreams as we start to close our eyes and drift off. So, I will say at this point, it's actually a shame that I can never properly remember my dreams when I listen to this particular album. Like, oftentimes when listening to long sustained drone music, I do actually have very unusual dreams. Mostly wandering out to these odd locations, mostly liminal spaces, endless hallways and corridors stretching further and further away, never leading to anywhere in particular, as I desperately navigate my way through, trying to find wherever it is I'm going. Like, urban exploring in your mind, perhaps, is the only way to explain it. Like, hard to explain, but, it's maybe just where my mind naturally wanders off to when I fall asleep, and I thought it was worth mentioning in this review, as this album feels very much tied to my experiences with dreams, having played it and napped so many times before. Like, I do kind of wonder, to, the locations of those existential places visited during those times. Kind of pointless to remember because there's probably nothing that interesting about it, but it's a little bit interesting to me, hence why we've used some liminal space videos in this video as well. But to go back to the song, you kind of just have another cosmic deity in the form of a drone experience. And this one feels very wild, I have to say, starting off so intensely with that deluge of deep undulating, resonating electronic drones, before morphing into the wildly oscillating frequencies towards the end. A slow morph across the entire length of the composition that happens so slowly that you barely notice as it all occurs. It's just the way that Davachi starts off the compositions in such a peculiar way, and then by the end of it she's just transported you somewhere else entirely without you even noticing. And the changes in the music happen so subtly and slowly that it just naturally transitions you across those changes without any awareness from yourself, it feels. Hard to properly explain, but my awareness of the experience seems to be as untethered as the music itself, and a lot of the time it just feels like I'm letting this music occur, carrying me along for the journey as my entire being becomes transported by the drones themselves. But I do think it's neat and cool how it all achieves this across the various tracks, all of it essentially being is just these very loud, intense drone experiences. But I think there's a brilliance to it, like when you play it and you just naturally let it pull you across those unusual states of being. Hard to explain, but maybe some people get it, even though it's a very abstract thing to try wrap your head around. Moving on to the next track, we get Rainbands. So by now we kind of know what to expect from this album. Long-form transitioning drones that change the landscape from the beginning to the end into these weird experiences. So this one, it kind of seems to start off with a rather cautious tone of sorts, hovering in space with this ebb and pull effect, as it's then joined by the emergence of these other frequencies. Some higher pitched, gently playing in amongst those upper registers, whilst you've got more low-end occurrences starting to slowly emanate out the scene as well. And it all seems to just slowly open up once more, this slow emergence of drone layers, with the characters in this one feeling very unusual and weird for the most part. Like, there's that kind of pulsating laser ray that opened up the whole thing, but then there also appears to be this weird sort of almost detuning synth layer, if that makes sense, just hovering the scene as the notes just pulsate further and further outwards. And especially with that really slowly stretched out layer in the background of everything, I kind of imagine this one, the emergence of rain clouds, those dark dreary days once again suggested by the album's photograph, staring out at this gloomy existentialism that just surrounds the world as you're pulled along. And seeing in the distance, this dark cloud where the rain is falling far beneath it almost, is simply what comes to mind when experiencing this track. But it is once again another fascinating drone experience, I have to say. Like, this one just seems to really subtly have this intensifying experience across it, just pushing further and further against that tapestry of drones and tones, being produced by the various instruments, creating a very odd experience that feels cautious and anxious in amongst the album, like there's this looming threat of something about to occur. Maybe anyway. It's a little bit existential in how it sounds to me, but I do marvel in the particulars of all of those tones, Something Davachi is just able to do is just produce such wonderful tones from her many instruments, creating these very cosmic droning layers that just warp your very perception, be it how you're perceiving the outside world, or even how you're hearing the music itself, or even a combination of both at the same time. And with it being a little bit shorter than the first two tracks, this one just seems to come and go, but it still resounds for a comfortable amount of time. Enough time for us to become very familiar with the scene without becoming overwhelmed by it. Weird and existential, but very cool drones once more on this one. So we then move on to the next track of Brumeux, and this is our shortest track at around 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So this one, to me, kind of opens up a bit similar to how Spanish Banks came across in its opening seconds, only this time we're greeted with a different tone of drone to start things off. And it slowly intensifies before adding in the resonating vibration of newer drones, that slowly drop into the scene, before this strange oscillation occurs alongside the persistent of low ends. It's another cosmic laser ray, kind of zapping in out of nowhere and continuing to intensify across the length of its runtime. But what I adore is the sort of wonderful density to everything, because you just have this growing miasma of low ends that, come out of the woodwork before all seem to ebb away, creating, at one point a very small space of silence that is then accompanied by maybe vocals or a wind instrument. And it's very odd, I have to say. Like, when this sort of little moment happens in this track, I have no idea what Davachi is doing. But whatever it is, it kind of has this weird sort of folksy vibe that sort of accompanies the intense drone that started everything off. And so with this one, I kind of just have sort of this image of The Wicker Man, the famous horror film The Wicker Man. The viewing of these strange little towns and places spotted briefly from those train windows, except with a folksy vibe perhaps. Very odd, I have to say, because it's very cosmic and spacey, and I like how it does change up the vibe from the opening tracks, offering something with a little bit more melody in some respects, especially with that kind of arguably folksy flute thing going on. I have no idea what's producing the sound in particular, but I think it's really neat. And it's a little bit amusing to me as well. I should say that when it comes to this point of the album, I'm usually completely knocked out by this point. I'm usually just completely lulled and knocked out and fallen asleep, that I've never noticed this little folksy bit in the middle of this. I wasn't all aware of the presence of this strange little section situated on this album. But I think it's just the natural effects that this music has. It just puts me into a sort of a state of incomprehension, sort of like a trance, unable to discern the details as they go past, as I'm just pulled further and further into that state of unconsciousness. And most times when hearing this album, I'm just not awake by this point, as mentioned, Thus, this is never one that I could say all that much about originally, until sitting down to write about it whenever I was writing this review. But it turns out it's a very weird one, even on this album, and I like it for that though. And even with the name itself, Brumeux, which apparently translates to misty or hazy, this landscape before us is obscured by the natural fog from this rather gloomy weather. I like it because it captures more of that same existentialism I feel of your mood being carried by the environment you find yourself surrounded in. These strange, misty, rainy outdoors, or those strange dream worlds that you've been pulled into. Of course, we move on to our final track to close this all off. We have Aurum, or I'm not sure how it's said to be fair. So this one starts off with a very nice low end, a vibrational hum that seems to resonate in the space, expanding, with this volume before receding briefly into that silence. And it all just seems to push further and further, leaning more heavily against those drones as it all starts to slowly progress. And there's a wonderful intensity to it once more, this cosmic being just starting to occupy the scene as we find ourselves slowly hypnotized by the presence of those drones once more. For me, it's kind of interesting how the sort of vibrational pattern occurring here, it seems to be fighting to almost occupy the space, teetering between these two states of a low-end drone and a sort of higher-pitched frequency bouncing back and forth between them. And as it starts to sort of, reach this boiling point, Davachi just then pours on top another resonating drone layer, pushing it all along for a few brief moments before letting that ebb and pull between the opening layers occur once more. And from there, it just becomes that hypnotizing drone experience, And it is particularly satisfying when you get these wonderful deep resonating layers that briefly introduce themselves. It's like they're fighting to take over the scene, only for that initial quavering frequency to just dominate the scene continually before being taken over by this intense and rather abstract low end about midway through. But I adore it though because it's so chunky and chewy when it occurs, and I remark in just how satisfying it is to hear those resonating vibrational tones that just pour through your very body when it just falls onto those, even when it falls into the strange harshness with certain frequencies at time to time, calling back to some of the more challenging sections on this album that have been experienced. I think as a closing track, it's a fascinating way to just bring this whole thing all to a close, bringing it back to that kind of darker, more moodier landscape as it just finishes everything off. And essentially with that, we have covered the Untuning of the Sky by Sarah Davachi. I adore this album. What an incredible album this is, I have to say. This is the kind of thing that I think sits so comfortably alongside the likes of Kali Malone. Hence why our commenter suggested them in our in that previous episode of Weird Music. When it was first suggested, I did add this one to my Bandcamp collection with the intention of eventually reviewing it, but alas, I kind of found it impossible to do so at that time. It was so difficult to just sit there and articulate my thoughts because I just always feel so lulled by it. That is until this time around was able to finally write down some of my thoughts about it, and as a result we've got this very weird review about it, don't we? But I'm glad to have done so though, because I've always liked this record. It's always been one of my favourite things that I've listened to out of the many suggestions I get from doing this show essentially. And it's the kind of thing that's just definitely right up my alley, isn't it? I have lost count of the amount of drone albums we have explored on this channel already. I have made a playlist of all of the drone albums, or most of them anyway, which includes some suggestions and some that I've just always wanted to dive into. But yeah, there is always a lot more of them to come because I find them so fascinating to talk about, and a lot of people seem to suggest them as well, so we are going to end up covering a lot of them. But this one I think is truly incredible though. Just this intense resonating drone experience that pours layer upon layer of intense sounding drones, just all contributing to this very cosmic experience. And as well, this was apparently one of the first things released by Sarah Davachi. It seems over the years she's quickly been making a name for herself in the world of electronic drone music, contributing loads of different albums essentially, as well as a few film scores here and there as well. But I think it's with her precise and expert approach to producing such wonderful tones from her instruments, it's no surprise that her skills are required in the world of music, right? Someone so familiar and comfortable with her arsenal of instruments and able to produce such amazing music as a result. I think it's wonderful and I truly adore this album. It is one of my absolute favourite things. Definitely one to check out if you like your drones long, chewy and hypnotic. And so with that, we will be coming to the end of our episode of Weird Music there. Another drone album, surprise, surprise, but as mentioned, there's a lot of drone albums on the wheel, so I can't say I'm surprised that it's picking them. I do. I feel like it's likely going to enter the realms of truly weird stuff when it comes to the randomizer, but we will see. Yes, it's just completely random every time. But yes, the Untuning of the Sky by Sarah Davachi, a phenomenal album of sustained drones, just one to put on and slowly disappear beyond time itself, it feels. Truly amazing, and I'm glad to have got this one covered. As mentioned, it's one of my favourite things I've been introduced to. Something I've listened to a lot, though mostly when wanting a nice audio blanket of sound to accompany while I fall asleep. Weird for sure, but I like to do that because it just feels so comfortable to me, and it's a fun way to experience drone music sometimes. But as well, it does sound truly brilliant, and it's fascinating to listen to if you just want to listen to long-form music. So yeah, with that, I do hope you've enjoyed watching today's episode of Weird Music. Do remember to check suggest things if you want to see them get reviewed. It is up to pure random chance if we ever get around to them. But do suggest them anyway, I will always add them in. In any case, I wish you all the best, take care, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.